The stars had always been quiet. For thousands of years, humans looked up at the night sky and wondered if they were alone. On a cold October night, they finally got their answer. Dr. Yuna Kim sat in her small office at the Daejeon Space Observatory. She had spent 15 years studying the stars. Most nights were boring. She would drink cold coffee and watch data scroll across her computer screen. But this night was different. Her computer made a sound she had never heard before. A warning. Something was moving toward Earth. Not one object, not 10, thousands. Yuna's hands shook as she checked the data again and again. She was not wrong. Nearly 10,000 objects were approaching Earth at impossible speed. They would arrive in 6 days. She picked up her phone and called the Korean Space Agency, then the government, then the military. Within hours, every telescope on Earth pointed at the same spot in space. The world watched as 9,500 alien warships came closer and closer. The Valari Empire had been conquering worlds for 2,000 years. They had taken 47 planets. Some species surrendered immediately. Others fought for a few days before giving up. The Valari had never lost a war. They did not expect to lose this one. Admiral Torek stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Victory. He was old by Valari standards, with gray skin and tired eyes. He had led 100 invasions. This one seemed like the easiest of all. His officers showed him information about Earth. The humans had primitive technology. They had only visited their own moon a few times. They still used chemical rockets. They fought wars among themselves with explosive weapons. They were divided into hundreds of small nations that could not agree on anything. "This will take 3 days," one officer said with a laugh. "Maybe less." Torek nodded slowly. He looked at the blue planet growing larger on his screen. Something felt strange, but he could not explain what. Perhaps he was just getting old. On Earth, panic spread quickly. People ran to stores and bought food and water. Governments told everyone to stay calm, but no one listened. Some people prayed, others cried, many just sat in shock and watched the news. The aliens sent a message on the second day. It was translated into every human language and broadcast everywhere. The message was simple: surrender in 72 hours or be destroyed. Give up your weapons. Give up your governments. Become part of the Valari Empire. Resistance would be punished with death. World leaders gathered in an emergency meeting. Some wanted to surrender. They said fighting was pointless. The aliens were too strong. Millions would die for nothing. But not everyone agreed. General Han Tae was 63 years old. He had served in the Korean military for 40 years. He had studied every war in human history. He had read about people who faced impossible enemies and refused to give up. He thought about the soldiers who fought to the last man, the cities that burned rather than surrender, the ordinary people who became heroes because they chose to stand. He stood before the world leaders and spoke in a calm voice. "I understand your fear," he said. "These aliens have technology we cannot match. They have weapons we cannot stop. They have ships we cannot fight. By every logical measure, we should surrender." He paused and looked around the room. "But I have learned something in my years of studying war. Humans do not follow logic when their homes are threatened. We do not calculate odds when our children are in danger. We fight. We have always fought. Against nature, against disease, against each other, and now, against them." A British general shook his head. "We cannot win. You know this." "Perhaps," Tae admitted. "But I also know something else. In all of human history, we have never surrendered our entire species. Not once. We survived ice ages. We survived plagues that killed half of us. We survived wars that destroyed entire nations. We are still here. And I believe we will still be here when those ships leave." The room was silent for a long moment. Finally, the American president spoke. "What do you need?" Tay had prepared for this question. He explained his plan. Every nation would contribute soldiers, weapons, and resources. They would create a united Earth defense coalition. They would hide their nuclear weapons deep underground. They would prepare guerrilla forces in every city. They would not fight the aliens in space, where they would lose. They would make the aliens come down to Earth, and then they would make them bleed for every inch of ground. Dr. Yuna Kim joined the Military Science Division. Her job was to study the alien ships and find weaknesses. She worked 20 hours a day with scientists from 30 countries. They had almost no information, but they searched for any small advantage. On the 6th day, the Valari fleet arrived. The ships blocked out the sun over major cities. They were enormous, each one bigger than any building humans had ever constructed. They hung in the sky like dark mountains. Admiral Torek sent another message. "Your time is up. Surrender now." General Han Tai sent the response on behalf of all humanity. It was short. "Come and take our world, if you can." Torek stared at the message for a long time. In his 200 years of conquest, no species had ever responded this way. They always begged. They always negotiated. They always surrendered. These humans were different. He gave the order to begin the invasion. Landing ships descended toward 12 major cities. Millions of Valari soldiers prepared for what they thought would be an easy victory. They were wrong. In bunkers deep underground, human soldiers checked their weapons. In cities around the world, ordinary people hid knives and explosives in their homes. Old men taught young men how to make bombs from household chemicals. Mothers memorized escape routes through sewers and subway tunnels. Humanity had received the message from the stars. Now they would send their own message back. "We do not surrender. We do not kneel. And we will make you pay for every step you take on our world." The war for Earth had begun. The Valari soldiers landed in 12 cities at the same time. They expected the humans to run. They expected crying and fear and quick surrender. They had seen it on 47 other worlds. Instead, they found hell. In Seoul, the aliens marched through empty streets. The city looked abandoned. Buildings were dark. Cars were left in the middle of roads. The Valari commander felt uneasy, but he pushed forward. His orders were clear: take the city and capture the government. Then the ground exploded. Hidden bombs tore through the alien formation. Before the survivors could react, gunfire erupted from every window, every rooftop, every shadow. The humans had been waiting. Dae Jin was 34 years old. Before the invasion, he had been a history teacher. Now he led a group of 200 resistance fighters through the Seoul subway system. The tunnels ran under the entire city like veins in a body. The aliens could not fit their large vehicles down there. Their sensors did not work well underground, and they did not know the tunnels like Dae Jin did. His fighters would appear from subway entrances, attack the aliens, and disappear before help could arrive. They planted bombs on train tracks. They collapsed tunnels on top of alien patrols. They turned the underground into a maze of death. The Valari commander sent a message to Admiral Torek. "The humans are not surrendering. They are fighting from underground. We cannot find them all." Torek frowned at the report. This was unexpected, but not impossible to handle. He sent more soldiers to Seoul. In Busan, the situation was different but equally bad for the aliens. The coastal city had a naval commander named Sora Park. She was 41 years old and had spent her life on the water. When the aliens came, she gathered every boat she could find: fishing boats, cargo ships, even small pleasure craft. The Valari shields were designed for space combat. They stopped energy weapons and missiles fired from far away. But they were not designed for hundreds of small boats approaching from every direction at once. Sora's fleet attacked at night when the aliens could not see well. The boats carried simple explosive charges. They would get close to alien landing craft and detonate. It was not a fair fight. Many boats were destroyed. Many sailors died, but they sank 11 alien landing ships in the first week. The Volari had never faced this kind of attack. They did not know how to stop it. Admiral Torek began to worry. His ground forces were dying faster than expected. The humans used weapons his soldiers considered primitive, guns that fired metal, explosives made from chemicals, even knives and swords. But these primitive weapons worked. His soldiers bled just like any other species. Worse, the humans did not stop fighting when they were losing. On other worlds, species would surrender when the battle turned against them. Humans did not. They fought until they were dead. Sometimes they would strap explosives to their own bodies and run toward Volari soldiers. They would poison their own food and water to deny it to the enemy. They burned their own cities rather than let the aliens use them. "They are insane," a Volari general told Torek. "They destroy themselves just to hurt us." Torek watched footage of a human woman carrying a wounded man through a burning street. Alien soldiers were shooting at her. She was hit twice but kept moving. She got the man to safety before she collapsed. "They are not insane," Torek said quietly. "They simply love their world more than they fear death. This makes them very dangerous." While the fighting continued on the ground, Dr. Yuna Kim worked in an underground laboratory. She studied every piece of alien technology the Resistance could capture. Most of it was too advanced to understand. But she found something interesting. The Volari ships communicated using quantum signals. These signals connected all the ships together like a giant brain. If one ship saw an enemy, all ships knew instantly. It was a powerful system, but it had a weakness. If you disrupted the signal on one ship, the entire network would become confused for a few seconds. Like blinking, it was not much time, but it might be enough. Yuna shared her discovery with General Han Tai. He began to plan. Meanwhile, a young pilot named Wu Jina volunteered for a dangerous mission. She was 26 years old. She had wanted to be an astronaut since she was a child. Now, she would fly higher than any human had flown before. The mission was simple but almost certainly fatal. Gina would fly a modified jet into the upper atmosphere. She would get close to the Volari cruisers that floated above the clouds. Then she would release an electromagnetic pulse device. The pulse would disrupt the alien signals. She would have 12 seconds to eject before the device exploded. The chances of survival were very small. Gina did not hesitate. "I will do it," she said. Her mother begged her not to go. Her younger brother cried. But Gina had made her decision. Someone had to be first. Someone had to show that humans could hurt these invaders in the sky, not just on the ground. On a gray morning, Gina climbed into her aircraft. She flew straight up, higher and higher, until the sky turned black and she could see the curve of the earth. 3 Volari cruisers floated ahead of her, huge and terrible. She released the device and pulled the ejection handle. The pulse erupted. The alien ships shook. Their lights flickered. For 11 seconds, they were blind. Then they began to fall. 3 cruisers, each one 5 kilometers long, crashed into the ocean. The impact created waves that reached shores 50 miles away. Gina's parachute opened. She floated down through the clouds, watching the alien ships sink beneath the water. She had survived, and she had proven something important. The aliens could be hurt. The aliens could fall. And if humanity kept fighting, the aliens could lose. News of Gina's success spread around the world. People who had been hiding came out to join the resistance. Soldiers who had been afraid found their courage. For the first time since the invasion began, humanity had hope. The war was far from over. Millions had died. Cities were burning. But the humans were still fighting, and they would never stop. 6 months had passed since the invasion began. The world was broken. Cities lay in ruins. Billions of people had died, but humanity was still fighting. Admiral Torek stood on his flagship and looked at the reports. He had lost 800 ships. 800. In 200 years of conquest, the Valari Empire had never lost so many ships in a single campaign. These numbers were supposed to be impossible. His officers no longer laughed about the primitive humans. They spoke in quiet voices and avoided looking at casualty lists. Some had requested transfers to other fleets. Others had simply stopped reporting for duty. The humans were everywhere. They attacked at night. They attacked during storms. They attacked from underground, from underwater, from the sky. They used weapons made in factories and weapons made in kitchens. They turned everything into a tool of war. On the ground, the Valari controlled only small areas around their landing zones. Every time they pushed outward, the humans pushed back. Every building they captured became a target for bombs. Every road they used became lined with explosives. General Han Tai knew that defense was not enough. The Valari still had thousands of ships. They could wait. They could bring more soldiers. Eventually, humanity would run out of fighters, out of weapons, out of hope. Tay needed to end this war quickly. He needed one big attack that would break the enemy's spirit. He called it Operation Homecoming. The plan required coordination between every military force on Earth. It required perfect timing. It required many people to die. But if it worked, it would change everything. Dr. Yuna Kim had improved her signal disruption technology. The first device had affected 3 ships for 11 seconds. The new device could affect 2,000 ships for 11 minutes. It was a huge improvement, but building it required materials from crashed alien vessels. Resistance fighters around the world risked their lives to collect these materials. The device would be launched into orbit by a missile. When it activated, the Valari fleet would become blind and confused. For 11 minutes, their ships would not be able to communicate. They would not be able to coordinate. They would be vulnerable. 11 minutes. That was all the time humanity would have. On the day of the operation, every human with a weapon prepared to fight. Submarines that had hidden in deep water rose to the surface. Aircraft that had been stored in mountain caves rolled onto runways. Soldiers who had been waiting underground climbed up into the light. The missile launched at exactly noon. It climbed through the atmosphere and reached orbit. Then the device activated. 2,000 Valari ships suddenly lost contact with each other. Their screens filled with static. Their communications went silent. For the first time in the war, they were alone. General Han Tae gave the order. Attack! The world erupted. Nuclear missiles that had been hidden since the Cold War flew toward the alien fleet. Some had been built by the United States, some by Russia, some by China. It did not matter anymore. They all flew together now. The Valari shields could stop many things, but not hundreds of nuclear weapons hitting at the same time. Ships that had seemed invincible broke apart in balls of fire. The sky lit up like a second sun. On the ground, human forces attacked every alien position simultaneously. In Seoul, Dae-jin led his fighters up from the subway tunnels in a massive assault. In Busan, Sora Park's boats surrounded the remaining alien landing craft. In cities around the world, resistance fighters stormed alien bases. The Valari soldiers were confused. Without communication from the fleet, they did not know what to do. Their commanders gave conflicting orders. Some units tried to retreat. Others tried to hold their positions. None of them succeeded. But the most important attack came from space. A small fleet of modified space shuttles had been prepared in secret. They were not military vessels. They were old spacecraft designed for peaceful exploration. But humans had turned them into weapons. Colonel Sung Ho commanded the lead shuttle. He was 52 years old. He had been an astronaut before the war. He had dreamed of exploring the stars. Now he flew toward them with explosives strapped to his ship. His target was Admiral Torek's flagship, the Eternal Victory. The shuttle was tiny compared to the alien vessel. It should have been destroyed immediately. But the flagship's weapons were not working properly. The signal disruption had confused its targeting systems. Sung-Ho flew closer and closer. His crew had already escaped in emergency pods. He was alone now. He opened a communication channel. He wanted the aliens to hear his final words. "You came to our world," he said. "You thought we were weak. You thought we would surrender. You were wrong. We are human. We do not kneel. We do not break. And we do not forgive." His shuttle hit the flagship at full speed. The Eternal Victory cracked in half. Admiral Torek was thrown across his bridge as explosions tore through his ship. He survived, barely, but his flagship was destroyed. The symbol of Valari power was gone. When the 11 minutes ended, the Valari fleet found itself in chaos. More than 1,000 ships had been destroyed or damaged. Their ground forces were being overrun. Their commander's flagship was burning. For the first time in 2,000 years, the Valari Empire ordered a retreat. The surviving ships began to pull back toward the moon. They abandoned their soldiers on the ground. They abandoned their equipment. They ran. On Earth, humans watched the alien fleet flee. Some cried, some cheered, some just stood in silence, too exhausted to feel anything. General Han Te allowed himself a small smile. They had won this battle. But the war was not over. The Valari still had thousands of ships. They would regroup, they would return, unless humanity stopped them first. Te looked up at the sky. The aliens had come to Earth as conquerors. Now they were running away. But running was not enough. The humans had learned something important in these 6 months of war. They had learned how to fight. They had learned how to win. And they had learned that they were capable of things they never imagined. Now they would learn something else. How to take the war to the stars. The Valari fleet retreated beyond the moon. Nearly 4,000 ships remained from the original 9,500. Admiral Torek had transferred to a new flagship after the Eternal Victory was destroyed. He sat in his command chair and stared at nothing. In 200 years, he had never lost a battle. Now he had lost more than half his fleet to a species that could barely travel to their own moon. His career was over. His reputation was ruined. But worse than any personal failure was a new feeling he had never experienced before. Fear. He was afraid of the humans. His commanders urged him to regroup and attack again. "We still have 4,000 ships," they said. "The humans have almost nothing. We can still win." Torek shook his head slowly. "You do not understand. Numbers do not matter to these creatures. They will fight with one ship. They will fight with no ships. They will build weapons from rocks and sticks if they must. We cannot defeat them by killing them. There are too many, and they breed too fast. The only way to defeat humans is to destroy their entire planet." His officers fell silent. Destroying a planet was forbidden by Valari law. It was considered wasteful and cruel. But Torek was starting to think it might be the only option. While the Valari debated, humanity was not resting. Engineer Bora Kang led a team of scientists and engineers in a secret underground facility. They had collected wreckage from hundreds of crashed alien ships. For months, they had studied this technology, trying to understand it. Bora was 38 years old. She had spent her career designing satellites and rockets. Now she was trying to unlock the secrets of faster-than-light travel. Most people would have said it was impossible. But Bora had watched humans do impossible things for 6 months. She believed they could do one more impossible thing. On a cold morning, her team made a breakthrough. They figured out how the Valari engines worked. The technology was still far beyond what humans could fully understand. But they could copy it. They could build ships that traveled between stars. Bora brought the news to General Han Tai personally. The old general listened carefully, then asked one question. "How long until we can build fighting ships?" 3 weeks, Bora answered. maybe less if we work without sleep. Then we work without sleep. Across the world, factories that had been making cars and appliances started making spaceship parts. Engineers who had designed phones and computers started designing weapon systems. Pilots who had flown jets started training for space combat. Humanity built 97 ships in 20 days. They were ugly. They were crude. Many systems did not work properly. But they could fly between stars, and they carried weapons that could hurt Valari vessels. General Han Tai made a decision that would change human history. They would not wait for the Valari to attack again. They would chase them. They would hunt them across space. They would destroy every ship that had invaded Earth. Commander Hyun Nari was chosen to lead the fleet. She was 44 years old. She had commanded naval vessels before the war. Now she would command the first human armada to leave the solar system. Her crew was made of survivors, people who had lost families in the invasion, people who had fought in the resistance, people who had watched their cities burn. They did not want peace. They wanted revenge. The fleet launched from Earth on a bright morning. Millions of people watched the ships climb into the sky. Some waved, some saluted, some simply stood in silence. They knew that many of those ships would never return. They also knew that the pilots did not care. The Valari detected the human fleet approaching. Admiral Torek could not believe what he was seeing. The humans were attacking, they were pursuing. This was not possible. This was not how wars worked. The defender was supposed to be happy when the attacker left. The defender was supposed to rebuild and recover. But humans, Torek was learning, did not do what they were supposed to do. He ordered his fleet to scatter. If they spread out, the humans could not chase them all. Some ships would escape. Some would reach Valari space and warn the Empire. Commander Nari smiled when she saw the enemy fleet scatter. This was exactly what she wanted. Large groups were dangerous. Small groups were prey. The hunt began. Human ships tracked Valari vessels through the darkness of space. They followed ion trails and heat signatures. They listened for communications. When they found an enemy, they attacked with everything they had. The Valari had never been hunted before. They did not know how to run. They made mistakes that experienced prey would never make. They hid in places that were easy to find. They moved in patterns that were easy to predict. They sent messages that the humans intercepted. One by one, the Valari ships fell. Pilot Wu Jina, who had survived her mission in the upper atmosphere, flew one of the human fighters. She destroyed 12 enemy ships in 3 weeks. Each kill was revenge for someone she had lost. Her parents, her friends, her old life. Dai Jin, the former teacher who had led the Seoul Resistance, commanded a small strike team. They specialized in boarding disabled enemy vessels. The fighting was brutal and close. Many of his people died, but they captured valuable technology and information with each victory. Even Sora Park, the naval commander from Busan, joined the fleet. She commanded a carrier that launched smaller fighters. Her tactics were the same as they had been on Earth. Attack from everywhere at once. Give the enemy no time to think, no time to react. Admiral Torek watched his fleet disappear. Every day brought news of more ships destroyed. Every day the humans came closer. He had started with 9,500 ships. Now he had less than 500, then less than 200, then less than 100. He sent desperate messages to the Valari homeworld. Send help. The humans are coming. They will not stop. The Empire received his messages. They did not send help. They were too afraid. The hunters kept hunting, and the prey kept dying. The stars, which had always seemed so quiet and peaceful, were now filled with fire and death. Humanity had arrived in the galaxy, and the galaxy would never be the same. Admiral Torek stood on the bridge of his third flagship. The first had been destroyed by Colonel Sung Ho. The second had been crippled by human fighters and left drifting in space. This third ship was smaller, older, and barely functional, but it was all he had left. Of the 9,500 ships that had invaded Earth, only 17 remained. 17. The number haunted Torek. He repeated it to himself again and again, trying to understand how this had happened. The Valari Empire was the greatest power in the galaxy. They had conquered 47 worlds. They had never lost a war. And now 17 ships limped toward home, chased by creatures who had been throwing rocks at each other just a few thousand years ago. Commander Hyun Nari's fleet had followed them to the edge of Valari space. Then she stopped. She did not cross the border. She simply waited there, like a predator watching its prey escape into a hole. Nari sent one final message to the fleeing ships. "Run home, little conquerors. Tell your empire what you found. Tell them we are coming." Torek did not reply. He had no words left. The 17 ships entered Valari space and made their way to the homeworld. News of their arrival spread quickly. The entire empire had been watching the invasion. They had expected victory celebrations. Instead, they saw 17 broken ships carrying the survivors of a disaster. Torek was summoned before the High Council immediately. The council chamber was enormous, filled with the most powerful leaders of the empire. They sat in a circle of floating chairs, looking down at Torek like judges examining a criminal. "Explain," the first counselor said. Her voice was cold. Torek stood straight, though every part of his body ached. "We underestimated them," he said simply. "We thought they were primitive. We thought they would surrender. We were wrong. You lost 9,000 ships to a species that cannot even travel to other stars," another counselor said. "How is this possible?" Torek took a deep breath. "They can travel to other stars now. They learned from our technology. They built ships in weeks, and they chased us here." The chamber fell silent. The counselors looked at each other with fear in their eyes. "They chased you," the first counselor repeated. "They left their planet? They attacked?" "They hunted us," Torek said. "They did not want us to leave. They wanted to destroy every single ship. I believe they would have followed us to this very chamber if they could." He activated a holographic display. Images appeared in the air. Human soldiers charging through plasma fire, human pilots ramming their ships into Valari cruisers, human civilians building weapons from pieces of destroyed alien technology. "Look at them," Torek said. "Look at their eyes. They have no fear. They have no hesitation. They fight like they have nothing to lose, even when they have everything to lose. I have conquered 100 worlds. I have never seen anything like this." The counselors watched the images in horrified silence. "But this is not why I came back," Torek continued. "I came back because they wanted me to deliver a message." He activated another recording. General Hantai appeared in the hologram. He stood in the ruins of a Valari command center on Earth. Behind him stood Commander Nari, Dr. Yuna Kim, pilot Wu Jina, and dozens of other survivors. They were dirty and tired, but their eyes were bright. "People of the Valari Empire," Tay said in a calm voice, "you sent your fleet to our world. You expected us to kneel. You expected us to surrender. You expected easy victory." He gestured at the rubble around him. "This is your answer. 17 ships. That is all we allowed to survive. That is all we let return to you. We could have destroyed them all. We chose not to. We wanted you to see what happens when you threaten our world." Tay stepped closer to the camera. "You have spent 2,000 years conquering. You have taken 47 worlds. You have never met a species like us. We are not like the others. We do not surrender. We do not forget. And we do not forgive." His voice grew harder. "Tell your empire what you found here. Tell them about the species that fights with tooth and nail, with fire and atom, with every breath until there is no breath left. Tell them that we are watching now. We have your technology. We have your star maps. We know where you live." Tay paused and let his words sink in. If you ever come to our world again, we will not stop at your border. We will come to your homes. We will come to your cities. We will come to this very chamber where your leaders sit, and we will make you understand what it means to threaten humanity. The recording ended. The High Council sat in stunned silence. The first counselor's hands were shaking. "What do we do?" someone whispered. Torek answered, before anyone else could speak. "We close our borders. We do not approach their system. We do not contact them. We pretend they do not exist. And we pray to our gods that they forget about us." The council voted immediately. The borders were sealed. Messages were sent to every Valari ship, every colony, every outpost. Do not approach the Sol system. Do not contact the humans. Do not provoke them. On Earth, the survivors rebuilt. They buried their dead. They repaired their cities. They mourned the billions who had died in the invasion. But they also looked up at the stars with new eyes. Dr. Yuna Kim led the new Space Research Division. She was determined to understand everything about the galaxy. General Han Tai became the first leader of the United Earth government. Commander Nari trained the new space fleet. Pilot Wu Jina taught young people how to fly among the stars. The invasion had cost humanity everything, but it had also given them something precious: unity. For the first time in history, all humans saw themselves as one species, one family, one people. They had been alone in the universe, small and fragile and unaware. Now they knew the truth. The galaxy was vast and dangerous, filled with empires that believed might made right. Humanity had proven them wrong, and they would keep proving them wrong forever. The stars had always been quiet. They would never be quiet again, because humanity was coming, and the galaxy would learn what Earth had taught the Valari Empire. Some worlds should never be invaded, some species should never be underestimated, and some messages should never be ignored.